Intrepid and Ashes of Creation need to change the narrative. Otherwise, they're going to get the reaction that they just had in the last coming days. Let me explain. On Friday in the live stream, we got the prices for the new Alpha 2 packs. Now, initially, they weren't packs, they were just access into Alpha 2 at various different wave stages. You would buy wave 1 for $120. That would get you into Alpha 2 forever, but it wouldn't get you beta or anything like that. This then received a bit of a backlash. Stephen went on Reddit to clarify, which was basically changing their mind, but not necessarily saying they changed their mind. And then in a recent dev post on their website, they announced some extra changes. Basically, each of the waves was going to get beta access, which we knew about, but also 1 month game time, some embers, some of the in-game currency, and ultimately it basically just improved the value of the packages, which, to be fair, I think was a very good change. That's the kind of thing we want to see when you give feedback. We want the reaction and we want a positive reaction, and I think that was. Now, to some people, it almost doesn't matter what the price is, because to a lot of people, you are simply charging to test the game. And this is what I think is actually flawed. And it's not just the people who are wanting to test the game or play the product or whatever you want to call it. I think some of the blame lies with Intrepid, but they're in a little bit of a tough place, between a rock and a hard place, and I'm not sure they can get out of it properly. So the basic dialogue around this subject, and Stephen said this on Reddit, is that you can either support the game or keep in mind that you will be testing a product. And when you look at the Alpha 2 key wave packages, that looks like a value proposition, doesn't it? You pay $120, you pay $100 or what have you, and you get the things on the screen. You give us money, we let you have this. And when you think about it, that sounds ludicrous, and you get reactions from Asmongold, although this isn't a direct feedback on Asmongold statements, but you get people and they say that the value of that isn't very good when you compare it to AAA games. And they're not wrong. On the surface, paying to test a game sounds ludicrous to most people. And at these prices especially, it seems even crazier. A lot of people will simply be used to marketing betas where you buy the game, but you get to test a beta, a closed beta, maybe a month or so before the game actually comes out. This is a fundamentally different concept. This is proper alpha testing. The game will not really be a game. It will not really be a product. You will be testing it, and they want your feedback as such. And I think that narrative that Intrepid have said before, they always say, keep in mind you're testing a game here, it's a proper alpha test. I think that narrative itself needs to change, because ultimately, I don't think people are going to pay to test your game in the main. I think there's sort of 3 camps in total. You'll have people who want to just fund the game because it's the game that they desperately want. They want you to succeed. They will give you money. They're not necessarily bothered how much it is as long as they can afford it. And then you do have a small section of people who will be paying to test the game. They might actually enjoy testing the products for whatever reason. I actually think, and you're not going to like it, but I think most people actually fit into the middle category where they're paying because they think they can get enjoyment out of it. A lot of the MMO community is so desperate that they'd rather play an alpha state of an MMO that feels like a real MMO that will ultimately end up being a high quality MMO, rather one of the pay to win turgid MMOs that currently exist. There's a reason that actually testing games is a job. It's because it's not really very fun to do. Most people will not have tested buggy clients. They'll not be used to that in the main. Now, I know a lot of you will be screaming at me right now saying, but Jay, that's the fault of the player, the buyer, the consumer. That's not Intrepid's fault, because they say, hey, don't buy this unless you're going to test it, or don't buy this unless you're going to support it. Well, I think they need to stop talking about testing it. Paying to test sounds like a product. What we need to do is shift the whole narrative to be about funding the game, supporting the vision, supporting the product, paying in the hopes that it eventually materializes. I think that's more of what Star Citizen does. They maybe focus on that angle. They say, hey, you give us money, we'll end up making more and more features. Now, you can sort of get into a risky loop there where you keep getting money and funding from desperate people, and then you don't actually end up finalizing the game because you keep adding features. There is a risk and a concern that that could happen. And I definitely hear what some of you are going to be saying, which is, Jay, We have been told that this game is fully funded. So what am I supporting exactly? And that is a very real problem. In a variety of different ways, Stephen has sort of said that the game is fully funded to completion. But actually, the context of that statement is being missed, and I've sort of gone around looking for sources. But let me quote something from a Tim the Tatman interview. The game's funded to completion. I'm personally funding everything. So what he's saying is, you don't need to worry about the game not being made. It's not like if we don't get enough money, we won't make the game. I will make sure it's finished. That then completely scuppers the plan that I had, where I'm saying let's change the narrative to be about funding the game, because you're not really funding the game. You're making it so Stephen doesn't have to spend as much. And that's going to be something that's very hard to sell. We know, because Stephen just recently said it, that they've spent $85 to $90 million. And we know that the fan funding part of that has been around 30 million. So Stephen and whatever investors they have are in the hole of about $50 million. Whether or not you buy one of the packages going forward doesn't matter in a way, in theory, because the game will get made either way. Stephen will fund it. And I think this communication has caused problems and will continue to cause problems for Intrepid as we move forward. I understand why they would say something like that at the start, because a lot of Kickstarters, it's like, well, if we only get 1 million and we need more money, what's going to happen? The game's going to fail and you're going to lose your money. So Stephen was trying to calm people down. Like, don't worry, you're not going to lose your money. The game's definitely going to be made. So how could this narrative be changed if they actually wanted to? Well, we need to learn a little bit of a lesson from Star Citizen. So the way to fix this is going to be very difficult. You can't come out and say, hey, I need money, because the fully funded statements from before won't make any sense. And you can't really make the argument that getting more money will help fund the game immediately, because it just won't be very clear. What I think we need is just a slight shift of tone of speaking. Take away the testing a product, as in you're not buying a game, you're paying to test a product, because most people don't want to actually test a product, and just start emphasizing the supporting a vision. You don't even have to fully explain why. You don't have to give people benefits necessarily. You don't have to make promises that you can't deliver. You don't have to say, well, if I get 120 million funding, I will then give you a feature that you've not yet asked for. We don't need to go down the Star Citizen route. But when it comes to the packages, they shouldn't be products that you are buying. It shouldn't be like you are buying a package. It should be you are supporting the vision of the game, and if you do it at this level, we will give you these. That's sort of what it was at Kickstarter. That's sort of what the extra previous packages were. But now people are expecting sort of it to be more of a product, a game, than just the test. And yes, the consumers are obviously at fault here as well. If you're buying Ashes of Creation expecting a proper game, and you would then complain that it's not a game, you would be the fool. They've said it ample times. It's nothing crazy. I'm not saying that Intrepid are purely to blame here. I know that the consumers would obviously have some of the blame as well. In fact, it probably is more of the consumers than Intrepid, but I think they could help themselves here. Change the narrative, talk about supporting the vision of the game. Have the packages be a reward for supporting the vision. Don't make it so you are buying a package and you are buying a product. That then begs for value proposition queries, of which the game doesn't really succeed. $120 to play an Alpha 2 build when most people aren't going to actually do proper testing, yeah, it's bad value. Now, there's loads of counter arguments to this, by the way. I know some people will say, oh, actually, you should have a big price tag so that we don't get the riffraff in and you get high quality feedback. Sure, maybe, although I would actually say that the more people in, the better the feedback will be overall. But I'm not really bothered about that. Change the narrative, change the way that we speak about it, change the way that it's perceived, and I think some of these problems will go away. But you have to be careful, because then we get into the argument of whether or not the game is actually fully funded. What you would ultimately be doing is giving Intrepid money so that it's not going directly out of Stephen's pocket. And that's a weird place to be in. I'm not angry about the price tag of $100 or $120 because of the very nature of how the game is being made with the fan funding. In theory, if they need money to complete the game and you're supporting the game, then the price makes sense. You're supporting the project. But if you're buying a product, then the values are going to start looking Crazy. I've rambled a lot there, but I think it's important. I don't know how they will do this. I don't know how they will succeed. I think a lot of the problems come from the fan funding, come from the fact that Steven said it's already fully funded. Never actually said it's completely fully funded, as in the money already exists. What he's saying is, I will make up the difference, and he is making up the difference, him and his investors. The pricing for these alpha packages, for example, they were sort of set when they did the Kickstarter. Although I personally think that if they would have lowered the price of these and simply said to the Kickstarter backers, hey, you were supporting the project, you can't be angry now that we're selling a product. Maybe, maybe not. That sounds like a bad idea as well. I think overall, just change the narrative a little bit, make it so that you're supporting the project, try and give rewards for people who support the project, rather than making it about testing a game, rather than make it about testing a product. Product means value, support means sort of charity. Most people are just looking for the fun in between though. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Goodbye.